is John Baker. I will call the meeting to order. I believe we have a quorum. Could the board members each speak up?
That's Dr. Haley. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, it's Marty.
Good morning.
Morning, Chair Baker. This is Tom Van Alstall.
Hey, Tom.
Hello, sir.
Bobby Stein's here.
Morning, John.
Great. Okay. Well, we do have.
Morning, John.
We do have a quorum, and thank you all for being here. Let's bow our head for a time of reflection, please. Thank you. We've got a lot of guests this morning. Paul, do you want to introduce anybody, or are you going to go right into your?
A couple of Teams or Zoom-based camps, which have been a lot of fun and I think successful. I know you'll have to ask me when the commercial class. But most of my time has actually been spent out at the wetland.
Everything's muted.
We're getting ready to open that next month. Given a couple of tours, like outside tours, when I can have.
There, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. I think as we go through the schedule, we'll introduce folks then as opposed to trying to do it now.
Well, so
It landed right after you asked for a roll call of the board members. I lost audio from my phone.
Just one moment.
Sure. Because I've had to do a lot of, really more project management kind of programs right now.
We're getting a lot of feedback from Susan.
Like making sure all the advertising and things like that go underway, getting all those grants wrapped up.
Yeah, I think we need to mute Susan, and we can't hear Jody.
Okay, all lines have been muted. I'm going to unmute the call-in users. Jeremy, I know you're 718. For those that are on the call-in users, I'm going to unmute your lines if you've joined. If you need to mute your line, you can press *6 on your telephone or use the mute option on your phone.
Landon, I'm back using my telephone. Right when the chair called for a roll call, my audio went out, but now I'm back. I'm using my telephone connection.
Okay, Jody, I hear you loud and clear, and sorry for that disruption. Jody, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Jody, we did have a quorum, and can we get a motion to adopt the agenda, please?
Second.
Motion.
Second. Good morning. The same thing happened with me. This is Zachary. I got put off the line during the roll call, but I'm here. I just wanted to let everyone know.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second for the agenda. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, Paul, can you give us a safety briefing?
Yes, I can, Mr. Chairman. In a few moments, we'll hear about industrial safety as we recognize our outstanding line workers. So to change gears a little bit, I'll just have an announcement to promote good public health practices. We continue at JEA to operate under our COVID-19 strategy. We continue to work remotely and virtually where possible. Within JEA facilities and work sites, all facilities are health screened with masks, social distancing. We dispatch from home where possible. We have staged start times. We have enhanced cleaning and ventilation. We continue to promote washing hands as well as safe at work, safe at home, and keeping it real. So thus far, we have had a number of individuals that have fallen to the virus. It has stayed within a controlled area. and we continue to focus on it and encourage everybody on the call and the community to do the same. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Let's go now to our sunshine briefing, please, Jody Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the board members. This is a notice public meeting. It has been duly noticed. We do have a quorum. I believe we have all 7 members of the board present. Minutes will be taken, and we're in good shape to proceed.
Thank you, ma'am. Randy DeFord, do you have any comments as our council liaison?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me? Is it coming in clear? Quickly, just an update of the council, where we are. We just finished budget hearings. We unfortunately had to do a $3 million reduction in the budget that was presented to us from the administration due to sales tax reductions. However, I'm happy to report that we ended up in the black with $200,000, which is, as you can imagine, already allocated. The settlement of the Plant Vogel is going to have a positive impact on the city's bond rating. So I just want to thank you for the work that you did in relation to the settlement of that matter. Finally, the JEA Special Investigative Committee continues, and we are finally starting to make a tremendous amount of progress. And it's, quite frankly, a lot to do with this board and Paul McElroy and new leadership. And we just want to thank you again for your efforts in helping us with that. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. And I want to echo that thanks to Paul and Jody and the JEA staff. I know there has been a lot of work that went into that, and I appreciate it. And I think all of us as board members appreciate it. Landon, should we go to the comments from the public now?
Yes, we can go ahead and roll into the WebEx controls and the public comments. Let's see here. Okay, so for those that are new to the WebEx technology, let me give you a brief overview of the controls. If you're joining us via the desktop interface or a smart device such as a smartphone or tablet, you may move around the screen and we'll see a series of buttons at the bottom. The very first one that you may notice looks like a red microphone with a slash through it. If it is red, it means you are muted and will be on mute for the majority of the meeting unless recognized to speak. If you are recognized to speak or have been asked to provide comment, you will click on that button and it will turn dark gray or black. This will mean that you are unmuted and people can hear you. I do ask that you use the mute option to mute your line where you are not speaking. This will allow us to reduce the amount of background noise and have the most productive meeting possible. Also, if you would like to see who's participating in this meeting, you can look over 3 more buttons to find an icon that looks like a person. If you click on that, it will bring up the participant list. If you're on a mobile device, it will pull up in front of everything, and if you joined on your desktop machine, it will come up on the right side of your screen. This will allow you to see a long list of individuals who have joined this meeting. Also, I have enabled the chat capability in today's meeting. If you touch your screen or scroll next to the person icon, you will notice an icon that looks like a caption bubble. If you click on that, it will bring up the chat window. Please remember that this meeting is being recorded and that I ask you please be professional. If you run into any difficulties, you can chat me directly or you can type in the comments for everyone to see. Now, during today's meeting, when presentations are shared, you may desire to zoom in to more easily read the content. Within the WebEx toolbar, located on the left side, you will notice 3 key options. The first is the icon with a plus positive indicator. This will allow you to easily zoom in on the content on your display. The second icon with a minus negative indicator will allow you to reverse and zoom out of the content. And lastly is the icon with 4 arrows expanding, which will allow you to maximize a presentation to your current WebEx window. Now, due to circumstances resulting from COVID-19, a historic number of employees are rapidly transitioning to remote work. WebEx meetings have never been more vital for staying connected. For some users, meeting experiences may be impacted due to strain on service providers, causing internet and phone service degradation. Here are some tips you may take during today's meeting to better improve your experience. Number 1, close background applications. If you're not using them, applications on your device are using precious resources. Before your meeting or in today's meeting, close any applications and browser sessions that you're not using. Number 2, switch your call to audio. If the internet audio or video experience or the call me back feature does not work properly for you, you can keep collaborating. Call in using the dial-in numbers in today's meeting invitation or in what I've placed in the chat and be able to call from your cell phone or landline. Number 3, hardwire your workstation. Depending on your location and how many people are using the same Wi-Fi around you, you may see slower speeds on Wi-Fi than a wired Ethernet connection on your computer. And number 4, always feel free to contact the JEA WebEx support team. If you're having difficulty, JEA's WebEx support team is here to help you and may be reached at webexsupport@jea.com. And they're also available if you're having any difficulty and they're in today's meeting. Now, for public comments. For public comments, we will be using today the raised hand feature as the primary method. If you're using the WebEx client, this feature is located within the participant window. At the top of the list, your name will be visible, and to the right, you will notice a gray icon that looks like a hand. If you click it, it will turn blue, letting me know that you would like to be recognized to speak. Now, for those that have called directly in, there are 2 additional ways that you can notify me that you like to provide comment. The first is by pressing *3 on your telephone. This will raise your hand and then allow you to press *6 to unmute your line. If you unmute your line, please state your first and last name so that everyone may hear who is speaking before you proceed with your comment. As we go through today's meeting, I am the moderator and have the capability to mute everyone's line, and I will only do so to allow the meeting to run smoothly. With that, we are at 10 minutes after the meeting. It is 9:14. I am going to go ahead and ask Madrika, do we have any emails that we've received that need to be read into the public comments?
No, I don't have any email public comments at this time.
Thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and roll into the primary method of the raised hand feature that I just previously mentioned. If you'd like to be recognized for public comment, please go ahead and use the raised hand feature now. Okay, I do have a public comment request. I am going to go ahead and we'll go ahead and get the timer started. And we are going to recognize David Brudley. We are going to go ahead and provide, if you'd like to provide comments, we'll go ahead and set the 3-minute timer and you can go ahead and be recognized to speak. You may go ahead and unmute your line if you would like to go ahead and proceed public comments.
Thank you, Mr. I don't think it's working.
Okay. David, just to confirm, would you like to provide public comments in today's meeting?
Yes, I would, but I can't connect for some reason.
Okay, we can hear you. If you'd like to go ahead, if you'd like to go ahead and provide, David, we are able to hear you. If you'd like to go ahead and provide your comments, please go ahead and proceed.
Can you hear me, please?
Yes, David, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. My name is David Broderly. I'm a retired professional engineer, and I sat in on your last meeting where I learned that you are developing a new mission statement with vision, values, goals, and objectives to guide your activities over the coming months. And I looked it up last night on your handout, and it was buried deep into the package, or on page 424, I think. It's an excellent document. It's a good start for a management guidance for a generic company, given all the controversy that we've been through with JEA and the management team. This is a very good first step. I would like to suggest that you consider adding another value to the 5 that are already there. You had leadership, selfless service, competency, and integrity. I would like to see you add the value of stewardship of the environmental and human resources of this community, and a statement something to the effect that we strive to maximize the conservation and protection of these valuable resources. And then with that as a framework, I would ask that you, under goals and objectives, put some meat on that skeleton by adopting a goal and objectives very similar to what major corporations throughout the world are doing, such as Amazon, even British Petroleum, many more, Microsoft, Apple. They're basically adopting statements that are showing an awareness of the greenhouse gas pollution problem that the world faces, that is driving climate chaos. And I just have to comment, looking at what's going on in California and in the Gulf of Mexico today, there is stark evidence that things have changed rapidly in our atmosphere and our oceans, and that as a utility that manages both water and energy, I think it's imperative that we adapt goals that would address the issues. And I would suggest that we have a greenhouse gas mitigation goal, something to the effect that the JEA would lead a community-wide initiative to reduce our community carbon footprint in accordance with scientific recommendations, controversial in some respects, but nevertheless, we have to have the conversation, and it has to be a public conversation, and it can't just be left to the employees and the staff. And also, I would add that we have a second goal tied to water, because given the projected population increase in the community, we're going to have a water management issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brutally. They're very thoughtful comments. We are going to have a discussion later on today about our mission and vision, and this is helpful. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to go ahead and roll now for any additional public comments. For those that still wish to raise their hand, I am looking for your raised hand for public comments. Also, we're going to roll into the alternative method. If you have dialed in, which we do have quite a few this morning, if you would like to raise your hand in today's session to be recognized or to provide a public comment via the chat feature, you may do so now. The option for those that have called in is *3 on your telephone, which will activate your raised hand feature. Mr. Chair, we do not have any other comments that have been received or raised hands, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Landon. Let us now proceed to a recognition of the line worker appreciation. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On statewide, there is a recognition of the line workers in the state, and we support that, and we celebrate here. It will be tomorrow is Line Worker Appreciation Day statewide, but we want to take a few moments out and recognize the great work that our folks do. This is one of my favorite times to have a lineman address the board and share with them some of the work that they do. And I hope in the spring, with things getting back to normal, we'll be able to show off the wonderful competition that our linemen do in lineman rodeos statewide and nationally. A number of years ago, we were recognized as, we had some teams that were recognized as world leaders or world champions. So we have one great crew of line workers, and I'm going to turn it over to Ricky and Jeremy Matthews, and they'll introduce a couple of representatives from the line workers, one overhead, one underground, and then we'll have a talk from Wes about safety and the apprenticeship program. So, Ricky and Jeremy?
Yeah, this is Jeremy Matthews. I'm director of the Electric Distribution Group. Been with JEA for 23 years and really honored to be in this position and lead these guys. It's a great group of line workers that we have, well trained. I just want to thank you, Paul, and the board for having this opportunity to recognize our 190 JEA line workers. It is a dangerous job, and that's, as you see in the document, the state resolution, that designation was a result of a fatality and line workers doing his day-to-day job. It's a dangerous job, and They work in all kinds of conditions, extreme heat, day and night, to keep the customers' lights on. So I appreciate all that they do. And we do have a few guys. If I could just list them out, and then I'll introduce the ones who've volunteered to speak. We have Kelvin Jasper, who is a journeyman overhead line maintainer. Nick Stafford, a working foreman, overhead working foreman. Matthew Stafford is a electric maintenance coordinator, and those two just got back from the mutual aid deployment in New York, where we restored a lot of folks' power up there in New York. Mike Corbett, foreman, working foreman overhead. Bill Wright, the underground network working foreman, and Richard Kellogg, who's a troubleshooter. So if Richard is available, I think he was on the call to go ahead and kick us off and talk a little bit about what troubleshooter does.
Good morning, JEA board and guests. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Very good. I'd like to take this opportunity to, thank you guys for having us on. We love what we do, and it's great to have some support from management and to allow us to do what we do. So briefly about me, again, my name is Richard Kellogg. I've been with JEA going on about 15 years now, 4 years as an apprentice. I did 8 years as a journeyman lineman over at the service center. And then for the last 3 years, I've been in the trouble department. So a little bit difference between the trouble department and the service center. We're actually energy response. We mainly respond to emergency outages situations. And when I was asked to speak, which I'm thankful to do so, I kind of wanted to, I asked my manager for some numbers about, the things that we actually do in this department. Not bragging or tooting our horns or anything like that. I just thought it's, numbers always speak volumes. So, and this is directly from my manager. Right now at this time in this department, we have 24 troubleshooters and 6 dispatchers, and we provide 24/7 coverage for all of our service territory. And these numbers are from August to August of last year. There was 10,000 streetlight tickets, and the SOC Center restored 96% of those. There were 7,500 routine tickets generated. And for us, a routine ticket can be anything from a drop line for tree trimmer, customer service request. They're doing a house repair. They need their service dropped for safety issues, a wide range of things. So 7,500 routine tickets. And then obviously our bread and butter was we had 16,000 outage tickets. SOC restored 92% of those. And I'm very proud of those numbers because I love what we do in this department. I not taking anything away from the service centers. They're awesome. They're our backbone. When we can't handle it, they are always Johnny on the spot to bring in the big guns and the big dogs and the big equipment to handle it. And I think it's a beautiful team effort out here that we have. And, thanks again for having me on. I appreciate it. Thank you to the board. And, Paul, I can also tell Mr. McElroy from our department, it's great to have you back, sir. We're really glad you came back to help us out, right some wrongs from the past. So that's all I got. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. And did you say you only have 24 people that handled all that work?
24 troubleshooters and 6 dispatchers. Yes, sir.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Next, we have Bill Wright, who's an underground working foreman and has done a lot of work in taking care of our underground network downtown.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name's Bill Wright. This is my 20th year at JEA. I'm a working foreman in the underground network and commercial maintenance department. And we are primarily responsible for all of the 3-phase underground power throughout the county. And we do all of the commercial developments, the big industrial customers. And then also part of our responsibility is to maintain the downtown network, which is a whole separate entity as far as the type of cable and the type of transformers that are down there are unique to downtown. we are primarily responsible for all your larger customers and anything that is an underground feeder where you don't see the lines overhead. If it's going to a commercial or an industrial customer, that's the responsibility of our department. It's hot. We work in manholes the majority of the time, and it's hot, dangerous work, but we are a very skilled department. Downtown has a lot of lead work, which lead cable is going away, but we still are required to maintain what's in the ground. And all of our journeymen are skilled in that craft, which is kind of a dying craft, but it's still necessary to maintain what's there now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Paul, do you have time for one more, or we'll move on?
Yep.
Mike Corbett, if you're over there, West Side Service Center, you have opportunity to share some thoughts. Maybe they're not on.
Yeah, he's on there. Mike, you're currently muted.
Okay.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good morning, board. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you guys. I've been with JEA for 20 years. I'm actually a third generation JEA guy. So JEA has been really good to my family, and I'm thankful that we've moved on from things that we've dealt with here in the recent past. But I just want to say I'm a foreman at Westside. We maintain keeping the power on. We also, customer satisfaction. We look at safety and those things and make sure that we're upgrading our system and doing things to ensure customer reliability. Safety's always been one of our things that has been number one. And in the last probably 6 or 7 months, we've added COVID-19 into the thing. So one of the things we've done for that is to add that into our safety briefing, make sure we're maintaining our social distance, or if we go to get an outage on the house, we wear our mask and make sure once we knock on the door, we back up so we don't make the customer feel uneasy or ourselves. So that's been an added thing. I mean, we deal with elements, weather, all that kind of stuff. We've been hammered this summer with afternoon thunderstorms between the trouble department and us. We've had a lot of outages, and I think we've done a pretty good job with that, as well as helping on mutual aid and those sort of things. So this summer's been, it's been kind of crazy with the COVID, the afternoon thunderstorms. There's been a lot of stuff going on, but we've been able to maintain our safety record and really go home the same way we came in. That's our main goal. But I just want to thank y'all for the opportunity to speak. I thank you for the support that we get from you guys, and we really do appreciate that. It may go unsaid, but we really appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
Yep. Thank you, Mike. He's a real humble guy, and a few years ago, he was one of our world champion linemen. Competed in an international rodeo in Kansas City. And that's, I think we can move on to, I think Wes was supposed to speak a little bit.
Good morning, and thank you, Jeremy, for the opportunity to show my appreciation. And real quickly, I'm going to walk you through the process of becoming a line worker. Typically, when we do a recruitment, we have 300 to 500 applicants. And we always remind ourselves, these are residents of Jacksonville, Duval County, and surrounding areas that they want to come and work for JEA. No experience is required. The first thing we ask is that they take a math and reading test. If upon successful completion, we bring them out to the training yard for a physical fitness exam and test where we dig holes with shovels and post hole diggers. We drive lag screws into poles, and we cut cross beams with saws, and making sure they have the minimum amount of physical dexterity to do this type of work. From there, we go to a climbing school. The vast majority of these applicants have never climbed a pole before. So we spend about 3 hours teaching them how to get on a pole and climb to the 5-foot level. First thing they realize is this is a lot difficult than I expected it to be. And when we get them to the 5-foot mark, then we start qualifying them at 10 feet and then 15 and 20. Usually when they get to the 10-foot mark, they realize I'm afraid of heights because the only thing keeping them on that pole is a leather belt and a 1/2-inch gaff. And so that is the process. And we begin with 300 to 500 applicants, and typically we end up with about 10 to 20 successful candidates. So with that, I think on Appreciation Day, the thing I'm most appreciated is knowing the hazards that they work around and working in traffic, working in heat, stuff like that, is how safely they're able to work. And the reason is before every play, we huddle up, just like in football. Before every task, they come together and they have a tailboard meeting. They identify the hazards, they assign the work, and they lay out a game plan. And we do this before every task. And I've been here 35 years, and I can remember when we had issues with safety, no more. Because of this huddling up before every event, we're in the top tier in the nation. And that's what I'm most appreciative of the work that they do.
Thanks, Wes. Go ahead, Paul. You have something?
No, I just say thank you, Wes, and thank you for the focus on safety. Safety is first and foremost in our industrial work, and first and foremost for the line workers. It is extraordinarily dangerous work in an extremely harsh environment between heat, wind, rain, and even, as we recall, a number of years ago, snow when we had mutual aid working up in Long Island. And then the snow came in. So they do an extraordinary job focusing on safety, working on safety, and making sure they themselves and their peers go home in the same condition they arrived each morning. But
well, Paul,
go ahead, Jeremy, finish up.
Yeah, yes, sir. Just in conclusion, again, I want to thank you for the time and recognition for these line workers that do put their lives on the line on a daily basis and work in all kinds of conditions. They leave their families at home, whether we have storms here or have to go on mutual aid, and it really is a family and team effort. And I appreciate the recognition, and we're going to keep it on with training them and maintaining an excellent safety culture. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bobby, was there a question?
Yeah, I was just going to say that we are awful fortunate to have the employees we do to make us so proud, and I just hope we make y'all as proud as what y'all do every day.
And Paul, it's Marty. You know, this is in my past board service. These moments were my favorite moments because it really is recognizing the heroes that work for us. And several of you were kind to thank us as a body, the board, but we really want to express our gratitude to you because you are heroes. And thank you for your focus on safety. But thanks for everything you do. We really appreciate you.
Paul, this is Tom. I just want to echo Marty's comments. I was about to say that of the meetings that I've been privileged to be a part of so far, this is clearly my favorite moment. This is really, really touching. The professionals. I mean, at the end of the day, this organization is about the great people who comprise it, and the professionalism and safety and dedication and devotion and just the work that all of you all do. I just want everybody to know that you certainly have my deepest respect and appreciation, and hopefully that'll be shared broadly with all of the associates from the position of the board. Thank you.
Hey, Paul, Joe DeSalle, if I could. Yes, Joe. Yeah, I had the pleasure of meeting Mike Corbett by chance circumstance. They were working down from my block, and I told Paul about it. But I'll just tell you, their passion for what they do is genuine, which is great. It invigorates me. The other thing, too, that Mr. Wesley was talking about, and Michael Corbett told me, too, nothing's routine. Before they do every mission, they take time to consider the safety factors, which I think is absolutely incredible and absolutely mandatory, too, to keep a great safety record going. But these guys are great. When you get a chance to talk to them, you'll be invigorated, I guarantee it. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Joe. And then I'll just wrap up by reminding everyone what an exclusive club this is and how passionate they go about their work. Wes let us know that when we recruit an apprentice class, we usually have 300 to 500 applicants, and that those that finally succeed after the 4 years number in the 10 to 25. And so that's a 3 to 5% success rate. And you can think about that in any profession. This is an elite group of individuals that do dangerous work, and we thank them every day. It's not just Line Worker Appreciation Day, but it's every day we come to work. And thank you guys. Appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. That concludes our report.
Well, that was special. I won't repeat everybody's comments, but we are very, very lucky to be represented by such outstanding people, and you make us proud to be part of your team. Paul, can you go on to the co-op class?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We have a practice over the last number of years, dating back probably at least a decade or more, but really formalized in the last 5 to 7 years of a summer co-op program. And we recruit and have to select because there's a good number of applicants. And this year we had about 22 or 23 from a number of colleges in the state university system, as well as some that attend school outside of the state. There's a representative list of names and universities that they represent. I had the opportunity to participate in their graduation ceremony that we had about 10 days ago. What a terrific group of young individuals. They represented their schools extraordinarily well. They represented themselves extremely well. And I told them that they represented their families and their support system very well. These are truly outstanding young people, and sort of should give us, or gave us, certainly gave me, breath of fresh air that at some point in time, our country is going to be in great hands with young people like this coming to work for JEA and studying the areas they're studying in. They had the opportunity to work in a variety of sections. But we had some, engineering and environmental and finance and business and marketing, and we had some data scientists, and really did some actual work. And part of their work together was to break up into teams. They all got their Six Sigma, awarded their Six Sigma yellow belt. They all worked on a project and presented their findings. There were 4 or 5 teams that presented their findings during their graduation ceremony, and it was just such a privilege. And I wanted to at least list out and share with you the things we do. And if we can go to the next page, Landon or Jeremy, whoever's on this, and just show the letter that they wrote, which is in your package. And at least they graduated and they're on their way back to university, so we really couldn't have anyone represented here. But this was at least half of the class that showed up one day and had a picture of a lot of smiling faces, and grateful for the opportunity that we provided them. But we're more grateful for them choosing JEA. We hope to be able to get a number of these individuals to come to work full time and for a long time at JEA. And at worst, we've helped train and develop a new class of leaders within our community. So I just want to take a moment to recognize them and share this experience with the board. This falls under Angie Hires Group, and Pat Stams is our leader for community outreach and development, and she takes this group and works with them throughout the summer. Does in the spring does the recruiting. And then she does outreach to the rest of the community through the remainder of the year. It does a terrific job for us. So that's my report, and that's a sort of informational, Mr. Chairman. I thought that was of interest to the board to share this. We've got some great young people in our community.
It's not only of interest; it's really cool. It's neat for them. It'll be an experience that they'll never forget. And it's neat for us. It's being part of this community, and also it's a great way to recruit superstars. So thanks for doing it. Let's keep doing it. It's really important. If I can, let's go on to the consent agenda. We have our board meeting minutes, the monthly communications and engagement calendar, the corporate headquarters and HQ2 update, and the monthly financial statements. Before we have any discussion on this, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or issues from anything that is in this? Okay, if not, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, we've got that. Thank you. Now let's move on to Brian Roche with the monthly financial and operations report. Brian, are you there?
Brian, there you go. You're off mute now.
I had double mute, apologize. Good morning, everybody. I had the privilege to first off on the financials, and we'll hand it off to Ricky Erickson in electric operations, and then Haivu and water operations, and Bruce Stewart in customer. But the next slide is the first thing we do, even if it's finance, is safety. And where we are this year is remarkable. You know, we heard Jerry Matthews and we heard Mike Corbett, and then board member DeSalvo talk about the safety importance of industrial work. And we have over 1,000 or 1,200 employees between electric and water and field operations and customers and industrial jobs every single day. And the results this year is 0.57%, or 0.57 recordable incident rate. That is 40% lower than any results that have been done, achieved at JEA in the past decade. So remarkable results and great work by the team out in the field. Next slide, please, Lennon. We have two identical slides, one for electric and water about unit sales. You start off on the left. Electric unit sales have been basically around 12 million megawatt hours over the last 9 years. 7 of the last 9 years, it's been slightly over 12.2, 12.3. I think it reached 12.5 in FY16. This year, we are forecasting right about 12 million megawatt hour sales. Year to date, we are 1.5% lower than last year. You see that in the chart on the right. That's mostly driven by the lower sales in April through June. They're definitely COVID impacted. Primarily, you look in the bottom right, the commercial class has been most impacted by the COVID, and that is down 4.3%. Electric sales are driven by two things typically on a year-to-year basis, long-term efficiency and things like that impacted. But customer growth, 1.9% growth in Jacksonville or JEA service territory, 484,000 electric customers we're at this point in time. And the degree days, how much the variance is compared to the prior year or 30-year average. And this year, we're 179 days, both cold and hot, that are different than the median. That's about 5% lower. So that has caused sales to go down slightly, kind of offsetting the 1.9% growth. And then the COVID is really the summary of the three main variables this year. Next slide, please, on water wastewater. A little different story on water wastewater. Over the last 7-8 years, you can see in FY13 on the chart on the left, about 32 million gallons a year. At FY13-14, continued to increase. In both FY19 and this current year, we're forecasted to be about 38 billion gallons of water sales. The dark blue line in the column chart next to it is sewer sales, more of a steady range, about 25 billion growing to 26, 27 billion growing the last several years. That's a good sign. We see sewer kind of reaching water. That means customers using water more for both indoor use and a little bit less on irrigation and usage that is only used for water. So more water is returning to our system. And the highlight at the bottom in the magenta color of the chart is our reclaim unit sales. As you see, significant growth for FY11 in the range of about 1.5 billion gallons a year to now almost 5 billion gallons a year of unit sales of reclaim. So real good story on the reclaim Year to date, our unit sales are about 2.9% increase. That's driven by the number of new accounts, 2.2%. You look at the bottom left, that's about 8,000 new accounts from 354,000 to 362 here in this last year. Rainfall impacts weather impacts unit sales in the water side, both on the number of days it rains and also inches of rains. But up through June 30th, it's been kind of on average compared to last year and the 30-year average. We do know in the month of August it has rained a significant amount, so we'll monitor that the next month or two. Overall, on steady for about 38 billion gallons. Next slide, please. The next two slides, one for electric and water, provides a snapshot of basically we're on a budget basis. And JEA presents data at different times. Sometimes it's presented in GAAP financial accounts in the board report. It's there every month. We also had debt service coverage that the rate agencies look at a little bit differently, which is more of a rate-making approach. And then we have a budget basis that we work through City Council. So this is more of a budget basis, show the money going in, the money going out, and kind of highlights there on electric about $1.15 billion of revenues. Then the major components of expenses, fuel expenses are $330 million this year, significantly down $93 million from last year. And if I go back up, our current year revenues are $63 million lower. Well, that sounds not ideal in the normal business world. Some of that is very good for our customers and for JEA. The first $36 million of that 63 is lower fuel costs, both from the fuel credit that was provided to customers in May, and then also lower fuel sales. So 36 of that $63 million of revenues is strictly lower cost for our customers, which is a good thing. We do have a lower revenues. Top left corner shows in base revenues 19 million year to date, and that is definitely related to COVID impacted sales. So going back to expenses, we mentioned the fuel. O&M expenses are $227 million this year, approximately $10 million higher than last year. Non-fuel purchase power is expenses that we utilize to buy capacity from other generating stations like the plant Shear, St. John's Power Park was operating, and other type of capacity arrangements. It's at $75 million. And overall, we have a net revenue of $511 million. And what we do with that is pay our fixed costs and our capital program. So the first, you got to pay your debt service. This year at $133 million. That is $66 million less than last year. And the note in the blue column on the left shows that our debt service is expected to be more in this range the next 4 or 5 fiscal years through FY26. So the lower debt service is some pre-planning that has been done on early debt retirement that will help us grow into our future generation costs as we go forward. In addition, the R&R and OCO is capital investment, money available for capital investments. It's from current year revenues, $255 million. Got a blue bracket at the bottom. That's fully funding the $210 million capital expenditure this year and allows us to put more money into future capital reserves or to pay down debt. Next slide, please. Similar format, a little bit different results on the water wastewater. Probably just jump down to system sales revenues, approximately $450 million a year related to what goes on the customer bill every month. There's other revenues in water wastewater. We talked to the Finance and Audit Committee, capacity fees and connection fees and some other type of investment income to make up the $48 million. So you're around about a $500 million revenue business. It's $7 million greater on the system sales this year than last year. Then you jump down to what are the main 3 components or 4 components of the expenditures every year. O&M expenditures up to $170. That is mostly driven by shared services and some of the kind of leftover type of expenses that JEA has been going through the last year. We don't expect it to grow at that rate, $12 million next year, but at $170 this year. There's $362 million in net revenues available for debt service coverage and capital contributions. So you look at $72 million of debt service, which is $50 million or $49 million less than last year. That is from also some earlier debt retirement strategically done in the past. That allows us this year to fully fund the capital program. There's $216 million available from the current year revenues to fully fund the $202 million capital program. Going forward the next few years, the capital program is larger, over $250 million, maybe approaching $300. So there will be some future debt requirements. But overall, you're still paying down principal. And you look at years like this where we've done $48 million of early debt retirement. So very strong financially on the water wastewater system. Next slide, please. This is a summary. Go ahead, sir, Bobby.
Yeah, if you've been able to review all the capital projects and feel comfortable that these are in line.
Well, your board member Stein, High's View team is leading that. We work at system planning and the finance and the budgets. And over the last 3-4 months, originally those numbers were very high, up in the 360 range. Now it's down for the next couple of years. It's down in the 290, 297. Still looking at that. We have lowered the expansion of several plants to build it for the next 7, 8, or 10 years, but not the 20. And then continue to look at how what projects are needed. Look for reliability, redundancy. Might have to add some, and we'll continue to revise that. Typically twice a year. That's looked at very through a structured process, both during the budget in April and May, and then also during the rating agency presentation periods in October, November. So I'm sure the team will continue to look at that over the next few months. That answers the question. All right. And then go ahead, sir.
No, that's taken a lot of work with what's happened in the past. So I appreciate your efforts there.
Okay. Yeah, the team's been doing a real good job of that. And we're continuing to work. No one's resting. So we're still working on that. And, the great thing about Jacksonville, it continues to grow. One of the largest water wastewater systems in the country. Probably the largest one north of Miami, south of DC, and east of Houston, I like to say. But it's a great system. The key financial metrics. These are the 3 or 4 main financial metrics that the rating agencies look at: debt service coverage, days liquidity, days cash on hand, and debt to asset. And there's different elements of that. The rating agencies also look at fixed coverage charge or what have you. But these are the main 3 or 4. And JEA's year-to-date results are excellent on all of these. Continue to lower the debt-to-asset ratio down on electric down to 62% and water wastewater at 42%. Going towards our target of 50% on electric, because there'll be a year down the road where JEA is going to need to invest more money eventually, and it's good to have that debt-to-asset lower. It did reach up to 90% almost a decade ago. And then the rating agencies, Moody's, S&P, and Fitch, the ratings of A+, and AA, and there's hopefully these metrics continue to support looks in the future to support those strong ratings. One more slide on finance. Next one, please, Landon. This is a summary of the combined debt outstanding. And if you look at really the 4 columns on the right, there's a principal as we stood September 30th, 10 months ago, where we stood 30 or 25 days ago, and then the change, the 3rd column, and then our weighted interest average. I think in the future we probably should highlight a couple cells of all these numbers, but we'll try to go down towards right about the middle of it. There's a 1.963 billion number. That is combined electric system outstanding debt as we spoke, end of July. And then you drop down a little bit lower, about an inch lower, it's 1.261 billion for the water sewer, and that's composed of a mixture of fixed rate bonds at 997 million, hedged variable bonds at 104, unhedged variable bonds at 155. So kind of summarize a few highlights on this is you go to the 3rd column, the change, 364 on the bottom. That is reduction in debt this year in total JEA debt. Also, you can look at the bottom right-hand corner, the all-in weighted interest weighted average interest that JEA pays on its debt is 3.67. Over the decades, use a combination of fixed and variable debt and very really top of the line benchmark type treasury management JEA has been doing for decades to have those low interest rates. In summary, well, we don't have it totally hotted. Variable debt is about $850 million between both systems. About 350 that is unhedged, and 500 approximately is hedged. And I'll continue to look at that over the next several months with the team and report out to the board. So I want to go ahead. The next 3 slides we're going to skip. Those are more detailed supplemental schedule for the board to look at or a future conversation to support what we just reviewed. And we'll go ahead and turn it over to we have Ricky Erickson to lead the electric system.
Yeah.
Unless there's any questions on the finance.
Yeah, Brian, that debt does not include the reserves you have, right? Cash reserve.
No, that is if I understand the question, that is outstanding debt that is owed, where maybe 10 years ago that was 6.4 billion, I believe. Paul or Joe could correct me.
No, but
and we're down at 3.3.
You've got reserves, cash reserves on that debt, right?
Oh yes, there's Joe or Paul might know off the top of their head, but $500 million or so approximately. I think it's the right range. And last in the Finance and Audit Committee, which is in the board book, shows all 20 different type of cash funds, and it's all listed in this board book. Those funds, stabilization funds, cash reserves, and it has it listed out, itemized for the board and the public. Joe or Paul, approximately 500 million, sound correct?
Brian, it's Joe. Through the chair to board member Stein, I'll get a number. I'll have a number for you shortly.
And it's in the book.
Okay, Ricky.
Yes.
Thanks, Paul. Good morning. Thanks, Brian. Good morning, everyone. We'll give a quick update on our electric system indices. So if you go to the next slide, Landon, please. This is our operation scorecard. Brian talked about our safety. So it's been a phenomenal year on our safety. Our sales forecast is slightly below what we were forecasting at the beginning of the year. But weather has kind of impacted that, and Brian talked about all those issues, but we're pretty close, only slightly below our forecast. On our T&D grid, we have 4 indices here. Our safety, which is our frequency, is below target, which is good. We're in good shape. Safety is our duration. We're right on the edge, and again, these thunderstorms have impacted that this year, but we're still right on the bottom of our goal. So still pretty good shape, but pretty close to our target there. Our SARFI 80, which is our PQ measurement, we're still pretty good for this year, showing green, so we're good performance there, even with all the thunderstorms we've had. And our semi-5 continues to be phenomenal. We're still well below our goal of 0.8 at 0.11%, which is just phenomenal and just a real good result from our focus over the last several years. On our generation, our forced outage rate is 2.12%, again below our goal. So we're looking really good on this fiscal year for our unit performance. And we've only had one environmental compliance issue with our permit exceedances. We have one this year, and we're still well below our goal. So we're looking pretty good on our metrics for our electric system. Next slide, Landon. And these next slides go into detail on all these. So unless there's questions, we'll just skip this and go to Havu for our wastewater system update.
Thank you, Ricky. Good morning, everyone. I'll go over the wastewater metrics. Next slide, please. So Brian covered the outstanding safety and sales forecast. So I'll just jump to the third bullet there. For the unplanned water outages, we're above our goal of 4,100 for the year. And during July, we had 228 customers experience unplanned outages from 11 incidences. 45% of which were caused by third-party damage, such as contractors drilling into our water main. We had a pipe break back in April, which caused over 6,000 outages, and that caused the jump in the number to 9,200 there. Overall, about 65% of the main breaks were caused by either third-party contractors or bad installation. The next bullet, we are in full compliance with the St. Johns River Water Management Consumptive Use Permit requirement. The average daily flow is about 122 million gallons per day, which is about 13% below the 140 allowable. The north grid and the minor grids are well under the limits. The south grid is near its limit. It does get about 18 million gallons per day from the north grid via 2 river crossings. We currently have 2 projects in place to help with the south grid water supply. The river water treatment plant is in design, and it should supply 1.88 million gallons per day. And we have a 3-inch transmission main from the Main Street water treatment plant to one of the river crossings. And this should alleviate the bottleneck and allow 12 to 18 more million gallons per day to be transferred to the South Grid. And we will talk about the integrated water resource plan, and that should help us to identify the strategies for alternative water supply for the long-term outlook. Next item, the nitrogen to the river. This continues to be one of our biggest achievements. To date, we only discharged 246 tons of nitrogen to the river, and on pace to discharge only 324 tons for calendar year 2020. That's less than half of our limit of 683 tons. Regarding sanitary sewer overflows, we're currently at 32, exceeding our goal of 30. This equates to about 0.61 SSO per 100 miles of pipe, just to give it some context. About 22% of the SSOs was due to pipe failures in the gravity system, and 22% was caused by third-party contractors. So we'll continue to proactively evaluate high-risk gravity lines and hold contractors responsible. The average number of minutes of water pressure under 30 psi is 3.6, above our goal of 2.0 for the year. In July, we had a small spike in the number of minutes. We had 7.2 minutes of low pressure at one location in Nassau County due to valving issues. So we've increased the number of pressure monitoring stations over the last few years from about 100 to 317, which will help to identify and correct the causes of low pressure more rapidly. And the next three slides are detailed information, and I'm glad to entertain any questions you want to ask. I'll hand over to Bruce Dugan, our Interim Chief Customer Officer, for the customer experience update.
Thank you. Hi, and good morning, everybody. We'll go to the next slide. We'll look at some of the performance in the customer experience area. As you know, we have J.D. Power is one of our main metrics, and there are two surveys, residential and business. Both of those surveys use a similar model, but there are different weights, and we'll show you that in just a second. The residential survey uses 4 waves or 4 data gathering periods. There's 1 remaining for this year. For the business, they only collect data twice, and so that survey is complete, and so we finished the year in the second quartile. The residential, we are just a couple of points, less than 3 points outside of the second quartile. So we're right now in the third quartile, but we have 1 more wave to go, and we'll see how that comes out by September. If you look down below those dots, actually, let me touch on one more. The first contact resolution index, we're just a little lower than our goal there. A big reason for that is the COVID issues. For example, for prepaid customers, when we set that rate up, it really isn't intended to have extended periods of non-disconnects. And so we've had to put quite a few people on payment arrangements for that. That requires 2 phone calls. So it is impossible to have a first call resolution with that situation. But COVID is, as you know, is an unusual circumstance. What you don't see from the COVID impacts yet is that fourth one, the net write-offs. We won't see that for months, but we will say that normally we'd have maybe 4 million in payment arrangements. We currently have about 8 million. So there is some risk there. We'll continue to watch that, manage that, but that won't show up for several more months, and it will extend, the risk will extend beyond a year. Let's look down there at the next section of the slide there. July 10th, we resumed disconnects, and so you may be wondering how that's going. We're back to normal. We've eliminated the backlog of customers that were eligible for disconnect. And I wanted to say that you mentioned, or Brian mentioned, that we had 484,000 customers. 95% of them were never eligible for disconnect. So the 5% that were, if you remember, was about 24,000. And we've maintained a 91% reconnect ratio. So we have fewer than 1,700 customers who remain disconnected today. Many of those may be vacant now. The people may have moved to a different location. But the 1,700 represents less than 0.5% of our customer base that remains disconnected with the backlog removed for COVID. So that's good news for the community. I do want to just mention if you look at those bullets there on the left side of the slide, if we'll go to the next slide, you'll see that in a pie chart. Those elements for both residential and business are the same, but they have different weights. Residential and business customers view things a little bit differently, and J.D. Power has built their models that way. This slide has a lot of detail, but I think what I'd like you to focus on, and you can look at this and verify it later, but there's over 140 questions in the surveys. And so when we do an analysis of those questions and the responses that we get, over 100,000 responses, we see that the metrics or the questions that deal with the metrics for our normal operations, those things that those linemen do, the things that our employees do, those operational metrics still are scoring fairly well. In fact, better than average. So we're still strong there. So why are we falling behind our peers? Well, it comes down to company image or corporate citizenship. The questions in that realm affect other areas or other parts of that pie chart. For example, for price, one of the questions there is fairness of pricing. With the media coverage that's been over the last 12 to 18 months, you can imagine how that would influence someone when they hear a question about fairness. So we have some trust to rebuild with our customers. We're in the process of doing that, making great strides, and so we expect that to recover over the next year. So we've got some good, strong metrics here, and they can get better with just a little bit of work and with a little bit of time. We want to go to the next slide. This is to remind us that while our scores have trended in the right direction and they continue to climb, especially on the business side, what it doesn't mean is that our peers are not doing this a little bit faster than us. And so our ranking has fallen a little bit. Our scores continue to climb slightly, although a little dip on the residential side. However, we do believe that this is a point in the right direction with the plans and the strategies and the change in leadership and so forth. So we should see some good results going forward. But that will give you the JEA's rank in the industry, the Florida rank, and then the quartiles, as we already mentioned. So that's it for customer satisfaction. Here's just one more slide that shows you us in relation to other Florida utilities especially. But you can see that they continue to rise. Some of them as much as 35 points. Others, just a few, have dropped. And we're in that category, again, for the reasons I've already mentioned. But that can be turned around, and that's what we're focused on now. So we expect to have better reports as we go forward in the residential and business J.D. Power rankings. Of course, those will depend on the waves that we get or the data collection, so it'll be some time before we get new reports after September. And that completes my report.
Thank you, Bruce, and thanks to all of you all. That's a good report. Any questions from the board?
I'm going to continue to really focus on the customer satisfaction scores, just because that's really an indication that we've turned the corner with the community relative to what we've experienced in the past. So really looking to see how we advance that cause. And I wonder, do you have a specific plan in place to kind of work on more community outreach? Is there anything you're doing proactively to try to gain the trust of the community again?
Yes, in fact, it's unfortunate, but the entire communication department had really been refocused away from J.D. Power, from J.D. Power Focus. Since I've returned, we've refocused, and the entire department is now focused on J.D. Power, on those questions that we have the ability to share with our customers. Simple things, for example, the number of programs we have available in energy efficiency. I'm going to talk a little bit in just a moment about the electrification program. Making our customers aware of that can raise our score. So without the communication department focused on the right things, we saw those scores fall. So we've already got that in process. We've got a group of employees that are meeting now to talk about what can we do to re-energize the employee base to focus more keenly on customer satisfaction. What can we do as a company to help them, enable them to be able to share our message with their peers, their families, their friends? we're doing those things and looking at, we've got a long list of initiatives with my group that we're now prioritizing and looking specifically how they tie directly to JD Power.
Thank you.
Paul, could you add anything to that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I think as we launch into the new fiscal year, and but maybe when we get through the presentations, we can talk a little bit about that. Is just providing certainly the management team and the employees, the whole JEA team, a framework that allows us to focus on earning customer loyalty and framing our objectives and goals, individual departmental and individual goals in the upcoming year, to focus on those three goals of earning customer loyalty, delivering business excellence, and developing the unbeatable team. And I think by reaching out to embrace the organization again and all the employees in terms of hearts and minds focused on this framework of strategic areas of focus, and then laddering in the appropriate groups to work on that and have individuals commit to that in their daily routine, I believe we'll see a pretty quick snapback in terms of the JD Power performance over the next 12 months. You know, the pricing one, it's interesting in terms from the consumer's mind. You know, pricing and fairness in this case has nothing to do with rates. In fact, we had the only announcement that we've had in the last 6 months has been the fact that there was a fuel credit given. It has really to do with the amount of money that was spent in the last 12 to 18 months tied up with the ITN and the sale process. And so washing all of those expenses through from the consumer's mind, gives them a negative perception in terms of the way the JEA was spending money. So we've got to build into the focus now that we've got a good budget, that we've cut the budget, and start communicating effectively now that we have control of the finances, that we are in fact embracing that responsibility as public servants, and we think of every dollar as our customer's dollar, not JEA's dollar or anyone else's dollar, but having to have good stewardship of our customers' money. And that gets to Bruce's point of communication. So I think it's going to be an enterprise-wide program. We can support it, I think, with the framework of the three strategic focus areas, and move forward as we kick off the year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In
my rush to get to the consent agenda, I think I jumped over your report.
We can circle back and maybe get through these reports and presentations would be fine. Okay. I think would be actually good if we can get through this part of the schedule 4, and then maybe as we move to 5, or even after the board committee reports, I can jump back in.
Okay. Don't let me goof up again. We won't. The next part of our issues for board consideration are our policy reviews. And Steve, can you start us off with these? Steve Tootin?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Chair Baker, members of the board, everybody on the call. We're continuing here with the monthly presentation of one or more policies for the board review and or approval. The two today are actually for information only. The first one, if you want to scroll forward one page, this is the board. This is actually the index that summarizes the policies that either have been or will at some point be reviewed or approved by the board. I finally, if you look on the far right, the next review date, I finally got them in what I'll call next up chronological order. Obviously, the two that are presented today are at the top of the stack. At next month's meeting, they'll be at the bottom, and we'll move them up as we go. I haven't taken the draft designation off yet because I anticipate there might still be possible shifts of timing, and either at the board's request or management's recommendation as to when we want to present a specific policy. But that's how it stands right now. So I guess if we can move forward 2 slides to page 82, we'll look at the first of these, which is the board education and development policy. This is actually a short one, just a couple pages. It was initially approved by the board back in October of 2013. It pretty much reads as it did then. There was one, I guess we'll call operational update, which mirrors a change that we actually did in the board policy manual in section 1.7.1, the director's individual responsibility policy, where it was denoted that rather than multiple board members attending the credit rating agency meetings, it's now down to just the board member. But Paul recommended in this document that we update it to add some alternate attendees if by chance, Mr. Baker, you're unable to attend, the vice chair, Mr. Stein, or Ms. Lanahan, if Mr. Stein can't attend, as the chair of the Finance and Audit Committee. So that's what's incorporated in here. Otherwise, other than also being presented in the new Policy Tech template, Policy Tech being JEA's Policy and Procedures portal, it pretty much reads as it did 7 years ago. So that is the first one. Any questions about this particular policy? Okay, thank you. We can move forward, I guess, to page 85, to the travel policies and procedures. Thank you. This is actually, this is a longer set of actually 2 documents. This applies to all persons who travel on official business for JEA, including members of the board. Like I say, it's presented here as 2 documents. The first one on the next page is Management Director, AKA MD number 120, travel expense reimbursements. This was originated back in May of 1988 and was most recently revised in April of this year. A couple items, one item here as far as a board member bright line is on the top of the second page. It speaks to, let me get to that page here. I'll just read it verbatim. Bear with me. It says a quorum of the JEA board shall be authorized to approve travel for any board members. And then if you go back to page 100, the 10th or 13 pages of the other document, which is the Organizational Policy Procedure, aka OPP, again rendered in Policy Tech format, it indicates this is part of consideration for protecting our succession planning process. It indicates that no more than 3 board members may travel by air on the same flight at once. This is just good business practice, like all corporations will do. The next item there actually speaks to senior leadership of the management also traveling by air on a very restrictive basis. So those are the main 2 things that actually apply specifically. Obviously, the travel policy has to be followed by the board as well as JEA employees and contractors, but those are the things that are specific to the board's requirements. Any questions on those? They're pretty quick. Like I say, they don't have to be approved, but as part of our process of bringing the policies to the board each month, these were the 2 that were up for consideration this month. Any questions? Yes, sir.
I would say we've all read these things and understand them, and they're perfectly normal. One thing would be helpful to the board members if you all could keep us up to date on opportunities for going to conferences where we can up our education level on the industry. I just think it's good policy for us to do that, and yet we're all very busy people, and we're going to have to be prodded to go to these things. But we should try to make it as easy as possible for the board members to find something that interests them and that they can take the time to do.
Yes, sir. We'll be glad to do that. Now, let me add too that the good news is that the trade associations such as APPA, American Public Power Association, and other groups that specialize in providing such training have pivoted well in the pandemic era, where usually they say go to Palm Springs and New Orleans. Most of the same conference they can do just as efficiently, effectively on a virtual presentation. And also, obviously, there's some money to be saved there, but I don't think there's much of a drop off in the quality of the content of the presentation. So that's the good news, is that even though we're kind of in a sort of a different operating mode now, the training opportunities still seem to be out there. But yes, sir, we will make sure that, and I'll also ask fellow members of the SLT, specific to your lines of business, anything you think might be noteworthy to the board, either reach out to them or to Paul or myself, and we'll make sure they're aware of it. Any other questions?
I promise you, Steve, none of this group is looking for a boondoggle.
No, I know. I just, it's, they never do these presentations in Des Moines. They always seem to be a little more pleasant places to be at certain times of the year. But anyway, that's all I have, and I thank you all very much for your time and consideration.
Okay, Angie, you've got a couple?
Yes, I do. Good morning, everybody, and I do have a few things that I need to present to the board. I come before the board this morning to seek approval for some amendments to the company's 457B deferred compensation plan, as well as the 401A defined contribution plan. The 457B plan was established in 2002 for JEA and SJRPP employees. This provided them the opportunity to voluntarily defer taxation on a portion of their compensation until the time of distribution per the plan provisions. Customarily, any and all loans or distributions, etc., are administered per the current plan provisions. However, as many of us are aware, on March 27, 2020, the Federal Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, which we normally know that as the CARES Act, was signed into law. It allowed retirement plan participants who are affected by the coronavirus pandemic greater access to and flexibility to their retirement funds. What this act actually did was to loosen the in-service retirement distribution and loan restrictions that typically to apply to many of these plans, as well as easing the tax burden on individuals who might take distributions from their loans or their plans during this time. What it also did is for those who actually had loans from their plans at the present time, they were able to refinance those loans in their plan or defer payment on those. It was recommended that companies go ahead and move forward with allowing employees relief under this act. We did that immediately with working with Mass Mutual, who is our plan service provider, to make sure that we facilitated this relief for JEA employees who might need to access their funds. There is no impact other than granting employees easier access to their funds during this unprecedented time. And what we're asking today is approval for these documents, which is just the formalizing that we have done this so that all of our provisions for our plan and amendments will be up to date. So we're recommending that the board approve and ratify these prior expedited implementation of these proposed plan amendments and authorize our managing director and CEO to execute all of the implemented documentation.
Angie, are you recommending for both the 457 and the 401?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay, can we have a motion to approve?
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you, Angie. Appreciate that. And Bruce, can you talk to us about the electrification program?
Thank you, Chair Baker. I'd be happy to. It's almost a rare opportunity to be able to talk about a program that's been so successful. So let's just get right into it and go to the first slide. Electrification is a concept that may be new, but for those guests that may not know, the middle bullet on the left really gives a short definition. It's the shift from any non-electric source of energy to electricity at the point of final consumption. So we've had a program now for 5 years wherein we've spent some money, some JEA dollars, in order to help our customers make some really wise choices on electrification. And on the right there, you see there's just a wide range of technologies that fit into virtually every part of our customer base. So we'll go to the next slide. Here's just some summary information. Some of the incentives that we've been offering have been fairly prescriptive, but we've still been successful since 2015. We've been able to partner with several of our major customers, and we've been able to implement and install several electrification projects. And so these things help not only the people that are the customers that are involved directly, but there's some just tremendous benefits to the community.
Bruce, I went ahead and muted all lines. I'm going to go ahead and allow you to go ahead and unmute your line.
All right. Sounds like we had a little bit of a technical difficulty there. If we could go to the next slide, I hope I was okay. Here's a couple of things that represent electrification in action. One of our big successes is at Jacksport, where we've been able to replace diesel cranes with electric cranes. They're thrilled with the changes, and it's going to enable them to expand and continue their job creation in the local economy. Robotics, Hans Mill is an example of that. One that may seem odd, it looked odd to me at the beginning, was welding machines. They're electric, aren't they? Well, it turns out that a lot of customers use diesel generators to power those welders, and we've been able to add new manufacturing lines and help customers set up electric from beginning to end on the welding. So that gives us that just an option to get some new revenue in through that program. And then even in our own company, we've got some diesel-powered vehicles that could be replaced by electric vehicles. I want to go to the next slide. Okay, here we mentioned that it really helps with customer satisfaction, and you can see some of the quotes on the left side of this slide. And on the right, you see logos from some of the biggest employers in the Jacksonville area, as well as several household logos that everyone recognizes. These are just a sample of some of the companies locally that we've partnered with to do electrification work. So if you look at that list, it's very long at all, you can recognize someone that you do business with, I'm sure. You go to the next slide. So what have we accomplished in 5 years? From FY15 to 20, 489 gigawatt hour sales have been generated. Now, this equipment that's been installed generally has a life of about 10 years. So we've only, from FY15, that equipment's still got 5 more years to go. Those things that were installed this year have another 9 years to go, or 9.5 to 10. So we've generated those gigawatt hour sales to this point in time, but there will be additional gigawatt hour sales from what we've accomplished already. Same is said of the 30 million in new sales. 30 million that we've generated in new sales, and by the way, that does not include fuel. We pulled fuel out because it's a pass-through. So that's 30 million against our rate. So the fact that the equipment that we install has generally a higher load factor than our system means that this helps put favorable pressure on our rate structure. By the way, this is just, again, 30 million year to date. The life of the equipment that's been installed should continue producing more sales to the tune of about 63.4 million additional sales over the next 5 or 10 years. Now, 275,000 tons of CO2 removed to date. Now, that's net. Electricity, with some of the electricity that we produce, does produce CO2, but it produces 275,000 tons less than what the technology that we replaced would have added to the local environment. And so, again, even customers who are not directly involved, they benefit from the higher load factor through the pressure on rates. They benefit the environmental benefits through the economy and jobs created. And we've got about 8,400 units that have been installed. And when we go into this, it's not simply, here's a rebate and go put in a forklift or a new electric forklift. We spend time with the customer to figure out what their needs are. We spend time with them on project management, in some cases, some engineering. And so it really allows us to be positioned as a trusted energy advisor as we go through this partnership experience with them. And I already showed you some of the responses from customers, their satisfaction with this program. So this is what we've done for 5 years. And when you we've spent about $5 million over the 5 years, $5 million spend, $30 million to date in new sales, add another 63 to that. So you can see this is absolutely great. So why not do more? If you go to the next slide, that's in fact what we are going to do. We're going to pivot and grow, and we're going to essentially double what we've been spending per year this coming year. And we're going to expand and broaden our program just a little bit. We want to be able to do more customized solution development with our customers, which really represents a more true partnership. It's less prescriptive, and it's more solving problems with our customers in a way that does produce the same benefits we've been talking about so far. So you see there the table has more ranges in it. It has more technologies in it. And so we'll approach more customers with these different options. We'll go to the next slide. So here's some examples of some of the customers that we would target with opportunities. And you see some of the same names that we mentioned before, but there's a large number there, and there's just a huge number of technologies that lend themselves to electrification. So we will be expanding that. By the way, because we have such a broad program, it enables us to have a better reach with our customers. There's only about 15, maybe 20 utilities in the country that have a program that's as broad or as complex as JEA's. There may be many utilities that spend more money because they're bigger, but we are in a leadership role when it comes to the breadth of our program, the complexity of it, and the offerings and the partnerships that we're developing. You want to go to the next slide? So here's what we're planning, what we expect to accomplish with this pivot to growth for the next 10 years. 1,937 gigawatt hour sales, 72 million in net present value for the sales over those 10 years for the equipment installed, 2 million tons of CO2 removed over that period as well. And by the way, those things that would be installed, again, would have a carryover that we don't include here. Anything that was installed in FY, for example, FY29 or FY30, still would have another 10 years of production for sales, for CO2 removal, for load factor impact. Those would continue, but they're not counted on this slide. And so again, we're going to look at ways that we can help push load factor even higher than what we've been doing, from around 73 to 89%. We want to look at 7,000 plus units installed. And this, because the ability to create custom solutions with our customers, I think it's going to position us as not just a trusted energy advisor, but a trusted energy partner. So we're looking forward to being able to do that because it helps our customers with their business efficiency, their profitability, job creation. It helps the environment locally in a big way through CO2 removal. So this program is just a phenomenal way for us to help the community, help our customers, and drive sales at the same time. We want to go to the next slide. This is the cost projections over the next 5 years, and you can see that we're going from about $1 million a year to $2 million, and then eventually almost $4 million toward 2025. Average over that period is $3.2 million. A couple other numbers there you can look at your leisure. If you go to the last slide, I believe it's the summary slide that looks at the FY15 through FY30. However, still that $63 million I mentioned earlier is not included in the slide. It's just adding the first 5 years and then the plan for growth for the next 10 years. So we left that 63 out. So we're looking at $87 million net present value for the entire period, plus that other $63 million. Favorable pressure on rates through system load factor improvement, new advanced clean, efficient technologies that grow their customers' businesses, and then significantly reducing the environmental footprint of our customers and our community. These things all come with the plans or the program that we've put together and that we've successfully demonstrated for now 5 years. And so being able to go forward for the next 10 years with additional offerings, with additional complexity, with additional partnerships with our customers, it seems like just a fantastic story. And we wanted to present this to you today because we knew that you would be interested to find out what we're doing on this front. So with that, I'll cease my discussions and see if you have any questions. Well, I don't hear any questions, so I'll just throw in one more thing. We just for FY 2020, just for this fiscal year, we've generated about 152 megawatt hours or gigawatt hours of sales, which is about a little less than $9.4 million in sales. So just for FY 20, pretty significant impact, and we're looking for bigger impacts as we go forward. So thank you, Chair Baker, and thank you, board members.
Bruce, could you explain to us what you talked a lot about the system load factor? Could you just give us a 1-minute explanation of what that means?
Sure. Load factor is a way of thinking about the amount of demand that a device or a customer uses, and then the hours that they use it. So if you had 100% load factor, you would turn that machine or that unit on, and you would never turn it off. But we know that most things like air conditioners cycle, so they don't have necessarily a good load factor. They come on, they demand a certain amount of energy, so we have to provide that amount of generation for that period, but then they may be off for several hours. So when we get into the 73 or 89% load factor, we're getting closer to the ideal, which would be 100%. Does that help?
Yep. Perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
Great report. Paul, do you want to walk us through your proposed board meeting schedule?
Yes, I will, Mr. Chairman, and I think it can be easily summarized that for a significant period, decades, JEA had its board meeting on the third Tuesday of every month, and in the last 18 months or so, it was switched to the fourth Tuesday. The fourth Tuesday, seems to be late in the month to be reviewing the prior month's performance. And I wanted to, at least before we set the schedule for meetings for 2021, check in with the board and see if there was, a strong desire to stay at the fourth Tuesday of the month, or if we could consider, I think, moving back to the third Tuesday, which would allow us to provide more timely, I think, financial and operating information to the board.
My feelings whatever the chairman and you, Paul, agree on, I'll work to make it work. Yeah.
Paul, I know that the January meeting, I could not do the third Tuesday, but all the rest of the year it would work fine. Is that acceptable? Could we begin in February with the third Tuesday?
That's fine with me.
It's a big
that'll work.
Me, because we typically have one of our big business operation meetings on every third Tuesday. So, but I'll will of the board.
Well, if it doesn't work for you on a regular basis, let's leave it like it is then. I think it's too important.
Yes.
So,
okay.
Can I get a motion to set the meetings for the fourth Tuesday of the month, except I think it's November and December?
So moved.
Move the motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, we tried, Paul. Sorry.
Yes, that's okay.
Fourth Tuesday worked perfectly.
All right. Paul, unless you would like to go ahead with your report, we'll move through the committee reports.
Why don't we? I think I would defer certainly to the board members and committee chairs to go through their reports, and then I'll follow that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Bobby, can you tell us what's going on with the search?
Yeah, we're, Mr. Chairman, we are working towards getting Carl and Joyce and Angie have done a terrific job trying to get all applicants in by the end of this month. I will say to everybody, Angie has done an incredible job. She has some family issues that she's overcome and spent amazing amount of time on this, and I just get a chance to just thank her. And I think it looks like we should have some very impressive candidates, and I think we'll have more to report after this month.
Great. Yeah, we're all excited about hearing it, but understand that we can't talk about specific ones because of the sunshine law. But that sounds like good progress, and they've scheduled meetings with us with all of the members. Is that true, Angie?
Yes, Mr. Chair. What we did in anticipation of moving the search forward and being respective of the calendars of the search committee members, we went ahead and scheduled meetings so that when we do close out the process on the 30th, which is the due date for all interested applicants to apply, we can then go ahead and vet those resumes, present the final candidates to the search committee for interview, and those are already scheduled with placeholders. So right now, basically with what we have with the proposed schedule is that we're right on target, but we did allow a little bit of flexibility within that schedule, being cognizant of the fact that we have to accommodate the schedules of the candidates as well as our board members.
Thank you, ma'am, and thanks for all you're doing on this program. We really appreciate it.
It's an honor.
Marty, could you walk us through your Finance and Audit Committee report?
Absolutely. And I guess I always get so confused because we already approved the adoption of the agenda, but I guess, Paul, we need to do all that all over again.
I don't think so. I think that committee approved the agenda.
Well, I thought so, but it's listed as an action item here. So I just want to make sure I'm following the right rules.
I think you are.
Yeah. And Jody?
Yeah, through the chair to Ms. Flanagan, all these action items were taken at the committee level. We had a quorum during the committee, and so that those items were not discharged to the full board, and so that's a misprint on the agenda.
Okay,
from a reporting out perspective.
Then that's fine. I'll just report out. I just got a little confused with the way it was listed. We did have a very good meeting. We did have a quorum, as Jody indicated. We also had a couple of the board members who are not on the committee audit the meeting, and that's always a good thing when we see folks interested in our plans. We had lots of presentations. I think the most significant thing that we did is we adopted and approved our internal audit charter for this year. We adopted and approved the internal audit plan. We had a lot of conversation with E&Y about the audit for this year. We identified the need to look for potentially an outside consultant to do a little bit of lessons learned from our prior year. So Paul is going to be working with me on that. And we specifically were addressing the need from the rating agencies to clarify what they refer to as a lack of controls. So we were going to go back to the rating agencies to address exactly what they were looking for, and again, go back and do some lessons learned. We did meet in executive session with E&Y, with our internal audit director, and with the council. The council auditor's office was not present, but didn't feel like we had any concerns to address at that time. We did have to defer 2 information items because we had so much to talk about that we ran out of time. So we look forward to picking those items back up on December 11th at our next meeting. Are there any questions for me of the Finance and Audit Committee?
That's a great summary. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Joe, can you give us a Governance Committee report?
Sure can, Mr. Chair. Thank you. So first of all, now, Jody.
Chairman Baker. For Mr. DeSalvo's committee, on the governance committee, we did not have a quorum, and so the adoption of the agenda was the one action item that did get discharged out to the school board. So it's, during Mr. DeSalvo's presentation, we'll need to take action on the adoption of the agenda for that committee.
Can we get a motion to approve it?
So moved. This is Tom.
Move the motion.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. The agenda is adopted. Thank you, Jody, for that. And back to you, Joe.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So had a very good meeting last week, and so items B through H that you're looking at, actually it's 1 through 14. Basically, those are the references that we're currently using to update our board policy manual for the board of directors. Our first order of business was to, for today, is to take action on going final approval for the JEA director's mission, vision, value, goals, and objectives document. Now, again, this has 2 primary functions. The first one is to expeditiously orient board members to our board's strategic foundational tenets, which are the mission, vision, values, and goals and objectives, and really explaining the why of our board's existence. And the second function of this document is to strategically communicate to all the stakeholders, JEA stakeholders, our foundational tenets. Now, Mr. Chair, in the public session, Mr. Brewerly, and I hope I'm saying his name right, brought up a very good point about the importance of stewardship, and then also some associated metrics with that, like greenhouse gas, carbon free, et cetera. And I think those are very important. What I propose, though, is that I would still propose to approve our current version of the mission, vision, values, goals, and objectives documents, because stewardship, I submit, can fall under the selfless service value of doing what's right for the community. And then as far as greenhouse effects, carbon free, et cetera, those can be part of the measures of effectiveness, which we're in the process of refining and identifying. So with that, if Joe, or I'm sorry, Madrika, if you could bring up the present version of our board mission, vision, values, goals, and objectives, 1-pager, please.
Madrika, this is Landon. If you would reach out to the technical support team and to provide that file for us, please.
We'll get it here momentarily.
For those that are following on by telephone and have the board package, that's on the web, it's on page 448 of the 518-page agenda and material.
General DeSalvo, just for an awareness, we are getting some feedback from your audio, and some. I see that you've joined via either a cell phone or a landline. We are getting a little bit of feedback or wind. Okay, the document is up.
Landon?
Yeah, that is a lot better. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so Mr. Chairman, so this is the current version, and fellow board members, current version. We did make some minor edits based on the last committee meeting on it. And so what I propose is I'd like to make a motion to approve this. And then again, we can incorporate Mr. Brewerly's comments more specifically in the measures of effectiveness portion when we get to it.
Is there a second?
And
second.
Second.
Further discussion? Paul, in the memo you sent out yesterday, didn't you have some different things in this for mission, vision, values, and goals and objectives?
Well, I had, I'm trying to think in terms of, I stayed away from the mission and vision intentionally. From a value standpoint, yes, I think we overlapped with integrity, but this vision, mission statement, and goals and objectives is a board of directors' mission, vision, goals, and not necessarily for the enterprise. And so I think that, as Board Member DeSalvo pointed out, that clearly in the other the values that we have, leadership, selfless service, and competency is embedded in some of the values that we have shown on the document I circulated.
Okay, so this is for the board, not for JEA. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. That's correct.
Okay. We've got a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All those signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, it passes. Thank you, Joe.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then just to cover the rest of what we did at the last committee meeting, we also reviewed staff edits led by Steve Tooten's team, who is doing a great job. And this, again, is a ongoing process. One thing I'd like to emphasize to all the committee members and board members is to understand that Steve's audit team will be the master keeper of this working manual. So edits, comments, etc. Please use the working document that Steve's team will circulate, and then return that same document with your comments and edits as we continue refining this policy manual. Additionally, Mr. Chairman, we did discuss the CEO evaluation criteria via focusing on the Category 3 executive limitations portions of the document, and also the CEO core competencies located in Appendix 1. And in general, the executive limitations part doesn't appear to require much editing, although we are going to work on clarity. For example, transitioning out of the double negative language, which we found to be pretty confusing. Also, with the CEO core competencies in Appendix A1, we propose slimming this down significantly. The current version is almost intractable, fairly unrealistic, and vastly complicates the CEO evaluation process. And then we also briefed our first, the CEO evaluation criteria. Again, the goal being that the CEO has exact visibility into their evaluation criteria the board will be utilizing. And we'll continue refining those two aspects at the next governance committee meeting. And also, of course, we're making sure that we're staying nested within the City Council's Article 21 charter, which we know is in draft, but we just got to make sure that we're not getting crossed with any of those aspects that are applicable to the board. Mr. Chairman, to summarize, I think we're on a good glide path. I think we'll be prepared to go final on executive limitations and core competencies portions of the manual during the next committee meeting, and then begin our initial discussions on the board management delegation portion, as well as JEA board bylaws. So pending any questions, that's all I have to report, Mr. Chairman.
Joe, you're doing a great job of leading us through a very complicated and tedious subject. I've got to tell you, the existing board policy manual is, I'd rather go to the dentist than read that thing again. But you've made great progress, and I appreciate your hard work. Any other questions?
I think you've done a great job, Joe, and your team. Thank you.
Okay, Paul, why don't you finally make your report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And today, and perhaps over the next couple of months here, I would like to take the benefit of the board's experience and guidance and talk a little more strategically about some things that we're thinking about, things that had been teed up in the past that probably as we turn the corner here, looking more towards the future, that without being disruptive, if you will, to next year's and what I would assume to be the new leader's desire for incorporating a strategic planning process with the board, et cetera, but sort of just set the table for us to start to turn the corner and look forward. So I hope to provide certainly some meaningful strategic information and background information, and again, obtain the board's benefit. But the first step, in 36 days, we start the new year, fiscal FY21, as I had mentioned in the note I sent out. And historically, from an enterprise wide, in any leadership role of any organization, setting out the path to success in terms of what are our key areas of focus for this year and really years beyond is important for the organization and all of the employees to sort of hang their goals and objectives and their work activities on a solid framework that will allow us to improve customer satisfaction, achieve our financial goals, and certainly improve our contribution to both the moral, social, and economic fabric of our community. And with that, we've sort of floundered, I think, in my review of the documents over the last 24 months, and would suggest, and we have a leadership meeting later this month, in terms of providing the organization some direction. And I've listed that out as three key areas of strategic focus and then a recommitment to our core values. The key areas of strategic focus I would wrap, if you will, around just a broad statement, which I think gets to our earlier public speaker's point of wrapping our strategic area of focus with the commitment to exceed customer expectations. And that could read community expectations as well in sustainable environmental, social, and economic ways. And so we're all about building community at JEA, certainly thinking about sustainability with respect to the environment, our impact on the environment, our social and economic activity. But three steps, and we use these very successfully, I think, in terms of areas of focus. And I believe, again, that very strongly in terms of business and strategic planning through my career, that these foundational areas can nicely morph into almost any business plan going forward, because simply they focus on customers, operating excellence, and employees. And so those are the foundations of a successful business. Certainly there may be some stakeholder involvement and other areas of focus you might want to put in, but core to any successful business are certainly its customers, its service delivery business operation, and ultimately its employees. So I would suggest that as we start to roll out the year here, and I wanted to just have an opportunity to get feedback from the board, that we push forward with these three strategic areas of focus. Each one has a sub area of focus, which gets a little more granular. And then as the leaders, the SLT will work with their teams, who will work with their teams, who will work with the organization in terms of matching up goals and objectives throughout the year or for the year that help us achieve these strategic areas of focus or goals. I believe, again, that they're consistent with good business strategic planning and will allow certainly a harmony and support any future detailed plan. On the values, I would just take a moment. We added one value, and I just want to be maybe specific about that. In terms of, we've had the safety service growth squared, and growth squared is is a concept we put in probably in 13. It's really grow your business, grow yourself. And so we can focus on growing our business, but because we have generally long-term individuals that work for JEA, we have a lot of seniority, that our team needs to continue to grow individually in their skills and knowledge as we transition and grow in the economy. So it's important for individuals to grow as well as grow our business. Accountability, which lined up certainly with Chair DeSalvo, and integrity, and respect. We've added respect in a couple of key ways, certainly respecting individual regardless of, we enumerate their sort of categories, but equally important that we operate in the principle of valuing all people and prohibiting any discrimination. And basically, it's business. It's essential to us delivering our business excellence and earning customer loyalties, and really supporting the desired drive for us to our organization to mirror our community. We value and embrace anti-discrimination practices, and we value diversity and inclusion as a way of life, and that we value and seek to reflect the richness of our community's diversity within our workforce. So I'll stop there and just maybe take some feedback and some observations on that, and then we've got a few more things to just talk about and run through. But I really think it's important right now for the organization to have been through such significant change. We've made some change. We're pointing in the right direction, but now sort of let's grab onto sort of a framework that we can all sort of rally around over the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months until sort of at some time in the future, a more formal, I'll call it broad, strategic planning process can take place for the new leader and for the board to work with him or her.
I think it's fantastic, Paul.
Thanks, Bobby.
Yeah, Paul, I think your strategic area of focus and core values are spot on. I also think that the strategic pathways report, cost structure review, business development, emerging challenges, et cetera, are important for a lot of reasons. But I think the big one is, and we've heard this expression throughout this meeting, it shows we're turning the corner, I think, from the previous 18 months of drama and focusing more on moving forward, which we have to start doing now. So I applaud your initiative on this, and I think it's the right way to go. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Sean.
Hey, Paul, this is Tom. I just want to recognize and share my appreciation for this third value, the develop an unbeatable team. I think given, again, the events of the recent past and where we're going, that is foundational to having the right culture and the right workplace community. And I think never more an important time to focus on that as a core value. So thank you for thoughtfully including that.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, thank you. I'll run through a few other things that Board Member DeSalvo mentioned, strategic pathways report. So I will spend some time in terms of working on a brief report. I'm not going to try to develop a strategic plan, but I think in terms of my experience and knowledge and the information that we have, and we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of documents and strategic plans and that were sort of pushed about in the last couple of years. But I think I can do a good job for the board in trying to cull through that and look at sort of known and possible strategic opportunities and challenges along the three major systems that we have: electric, water, and wastewater. And then each one has a pathway or a set of pathways in particular. I'll just use, and I did in my note, electric, for example, generation, transmission, distribution, market, and really leveraging our internal assets, the assets we own. And so, for example, generation, the further expansion of solar, renewable energy, what does that look like? What's the pace of time? and what are the plans and what are sort of decision points in the future. How will that affect transmission and transmission assets that we have? JEA has some very critical and very, very valuable transmission rights and assets running to the Georgia border. Distribution system will have to change in terms of two-way flows of energy, in terms of controlling, and there's emerging technology to help with that. A lot of devices out there to help maintain balance and control of the system, to integrate more solar at a distributed level at the way we've distributed our farms. So big changes in the distribution. A lot of this, though, is a little bit of caution in saying a lot of these are still emerging technologies. So what will come forward for me is we'll watch and learn, let others sort of fail and succeed, but be prepared to jump on success and bring in and import new technology at the appropriate time. And then finally, the market structure in the case of electric. Each region seems to have a different market structure. The more broadly implemented structure in today's world since the Energy Policy Act of 2005 has been to move towards a organized market structure. We still operate in a bilateral structure where we trade with individual entities. Other parts of the country have sort of markets that the generators pass energy up to, and it gets settled out through those that need power. So it's a different construct and sort of a different way of thinking about the business. We have to be mindful of that. And then finally, just leveraging our assets, and I'll talk a little bit about that in the future. You saw that in terms of electrification. There's a great opportunity there for us to increase sales and grow and closer with our customers, be supportive of them in terms of growing load, but also in terms of probably energy efficiency and being an absolute partner and steward of the economy for emissions. So I think we can deliver that in in the next 45 days, 60 days. We'll kick off the performance improvement cost structure. We did a good bit of work up through 2017, a comprehensive report. Some was adopted and implemented. Others, I think, sort of fell by the wayside. So we'll go ahead and update, review, and develop a plan on continuing to implement that work or the appropriate recommendations for today's context. I did want to give you an update on some business development opportunities. A very large one. This is almost once in a generation opportunity for Jacksonville. Will be the redevelopment of our St. Johns River Power Park. And we've been doing some work internally and have in this last month worked with the port in looking at that, what is 1,200 acres of prime real estate, and it's prime for use in the maritime sector, working with the port so we can go to the global marketplace and look for, through an RFQ process, look for a partner that has global presence and is looking to invest a significant amount of money to help us grow this great opportunity for the highest and best use for Jacksonville. And so I think that's, in the last month or so, we've had some good discussions with the port, and we're teaming up to move forward. We've got a couple of folks that participate in this space who are giving us some advice and counsel on this. And I think we'll have a great package out to the global marketplace probably in about 6 weeks' time. Give us 6 to 8 weeks to sort of have the feedback and assess that, and then look to hopefully make a decision by the end of the year. On St. Johns County and Nassau County, we've repairing the relationship there. St. John's, we've made very good progress with the group there, the county administrator and the utility, and we are, that is different in a way that we're tied together. We're an integrated utility with St. Johns County, and so that's extraordinarily helpful that we're working well. In Nassau, it's an independent and a standalone system that we operate in Nassau County, and we're continuing to work on some cleanup issues from the sale and prior, and work with the new county administrator who's coming in September. But we've met him. He's an internal candidate. I think he'll add a lot of value to our relationship. In new business area, again, we've dusted off the fiber and telecom business cases and had a team start to form on that and look at a lot of the work that we have done. And this isn't really in just the last year or two. This goes back probably 3 or 4 years when we started in terms of grow our business under deliver business excellence in opportunities to expand and leverage our fiber and expand potentially in some telecommunications. Natural gas is another team that we're putting together to look at the natural gas assets that we have and to see and evaluate whether there's opportunities there and in what space within the natural gas industry might we participate if we do. So a full evaluation of those opportunities. And we've had a great presentation on electrification. A couple of emerging challenges, and these are strategic. Again, these are big challenges. We have a very large development which is starting up again, and it is in the western part of the county. It is on the Duval-Baker county line. I believe a little portion of it goes into Nassau, just south of I-10, tucked up in that corner. It's 1,000 acres, so it's very large. Could be as many as 10,000 residential units equivalent. So there's we had some discussions. I guess JEA, the old team, had some discussions about serving that part of the county and this development in particular. No decisions were finalized or made or documented. We firmly believe that we have the exclusive right to serve that in our charter, and we're going to protect that and serve that community as it develops with water and sewer. So you may hear a little noise about that, but know that it's really important for JEA to preserve its right to serve, and it is exclusive rights to serve within the entire county. And to maintain that, and the reason for that, I would just go back, it's 20 years ago, when JEA found itself taking over the water sewer business, and there were 13 or 14 independent little utilities scattered around the county and all sorts of disrepair. And we went through and spent an enormous amount of money acquiring those, rolling those up, and an enormous amount of money investing and fixing them, bringing up to the standard operations that our community deserves. So, it's been very firmly placed in the charter that there will be one water sewer utility in the county, and we think that's appropriate, and we're going to protect that. On water sewer, we have an emerging piece of legislation that we're watching closely in Tallahassee on the wastewater side. There is a bill that would place restrictions on large urban wastewater facilities discharge and move it towards a zero discharge in about 5 or 6 years, taking that effluent to be treated and then either diverted to reclaim or to alternate water sources, either injection to the aquifer after it's been cleaned up or injection into the potable. So we'll be watching that closely and bring something to the board shortly. We'll have to involve certainly the council or Duval delegation as this makes its way through the legislation this year. It could have a very significant cost impact on JEA to divert the effluent flow in the extraordinarily short time frame that is proposed in the draft legislation. I think Hai mentioned already the South Grid supply issue and how we're addressing that. We'll have an integrated water resource plan in the next 60 days to share with the board. And a little bit of good news, I would say that the City Council received our budget, and thank you to Councilmember DeFore. The budget hearing went well. Chair Carlucci was certainly helpful in in allowing us to meet with individuals individually before, so we answered a lot of questions. But it went well. We had a few follow-up items, just more informational, and believe that we'll get approved in the month of September when the full city council approves the budget for the entire consolidated government. And then finally, and last point, the board letter that was put together and executed, sent to the team, the full JEA team, and sent a copy of that to you, was very, very well received. We got a number of unsolicited comments and feedback and emails back to us, just letting me know and asking me to let you know that the employees feel very good about being appreciated by the board. And so that's a higher level, I think, a broader level report, Mr. Chairman, and I would stand down and take any questions or follow-up comments. And hopefully that's insightful and does start to tee up, a little more background information on some what I think are meaningful strategic information and areas and initiatives that we'll have to take forward with us over the next number of years.
Thank you, Paul. Questions? The thing I like a lot about your plan is we're getting through the past and looking towards the future, and that's where we need to be as an organization. And as soon as we can get there, we will turn the corner with JD Power and with our customers. So thank you for that. Thank you for your vision. Thank you for moving us forward. You've been anything but a caretaker. You've really been fabulous. Is there any new business?
John, I just want to go back to on page 42, and I don't know if this is appropriate time or not. On these restricted assets, if I can ask Joe real quickly, I got your comments, Joe, but the debt service reserve account, the debt service funds, what is the difference of those two items?
Through the chair to board member Stein, Bobby, the difference is what we call the sinking fund, the debt service fund. We fund on a monthly basis 6 months of interest, and we fund, because we pay interest semi-annually, we also pay principal annually. So 1/12 every month, a 1/12 of the total principal payments go into that debt service fund. And then the debt service reserve funds vary a little bit by system. In the electric system, it's a maximum interest calculation on our debt that we fund. In water and sewer is a little more restricted. We fund both the principal and interest, a max calculation. I believe it's 115% of the max debt service in the water and sewer system. So that's the truest form. The debt service reserve, that can't be touched. It specifically could only be used if there's a default in principal or interest. And then debt service, again, we're funding on a monthly basis so that the funds will be available when they're due. And April 1st is interest, a 6-month interest payment only. October 1st is another 6-month interest and 12 months of principal.
Thank you, Joe.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, it's very helpful. I just want to make sure I had it clear. The other thing I'd say to the chairman and to Paul and the rest of the board, I know we have some telecom towers, cell towers, and I just don't see that as our core business. And the value of those assets are very high today. And Paul, when you get a chance, and I would just look at, does that make sense to sell at this time? Just another, just one point of interest to me.
Okay, thanks, Bobby.
And be very mindful of the council's restrictions on any sales?
Yes.
We don't want to break the rule before they even pass it. If there's the one bit of new business I have is, and I guess it's really old business, is at the last meeting, we referred the some unpaid bills on legal issues from the past to attorneys to review. And Jody, I'd like to know when we're going to get to that, and should we be scheduling a shade meeting to discuss it?
So, Mr. Chair, the problem with a shade meeting, we have to have active litigation. And so the discussion actually would be on the record for discussions about the outstanding bills and about the ability to, how we want to handle it's primarily Pillsbury and Foley. And, it's probably going to be one-on-one discussions with the board members when we get a report out. It has been deferred to outside counsel to take a look at. OGC had been looking at it, and we wanted to take it to the next level. We do not have a report yet specifically about the review, and as soon as that comes in, Paul and I will get together, and it'll probably be individual board meetings with the board members, because we can't have a shade meeting because there's not active litigation.
Okay, but I just don't want to let that hang. We ought to bring that to a head.
Yes, sir. We are working on that, and one of the issues is trying to move forward and take care of the past, and so we are trying to diligently work through all these different issues, and that's one of them at the top of our list to get resolved.
Great. Thank you, ma'am. Anything else to come before the meeting? Thanks for everybody for your participation. Paul, thank you so much for the beginning thing with the linemen. That was really cool, and we ought to think of other ways that we can interact with them during COVID. But that was, as Tom said, the most fun thing we've done yet. If there's nothing else to come before the board, I will say we're adjourned.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Have a great day.
Yep.
Thank you.